Welcome to the Future of Us Bookcast, your gateway to insights shaping our future. Today, we are opening up a blueprint for singular creation, 0 to 1, notes on startups, or how to build the future.
That's right. This is Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal and Palantir, also an early investor in giants like Facebook and SpaceX. He wrote it with Blake Masters. And it's definitely not your typical business book. It's not an instruction manual for just tweaking things.
No, it's much more radical. It's really a manifesto for building something completely new, something from scratch.
Exactly. The whole book hinges on this fundamental distinction he makes. It's about moving beyond just copying what already works.
Right, the difference between what he calls 1 to N, that's replication, spreading existing ideas, think globalization, and the real focus here, moving from 0 to 1.
That's the core mission. 1 to N is horizontal progress. It's extensive. Like you said, taking one typewriter, making 100. Easy enough to picture.
But 0 to 1, that's different.
That's vertical progress. Or, as he defines it, technology. It's intensive. It's doing entirely new things. It's that hard leap, like going from the typewriter to the word processor. So this whole discussion is really about understanding what it takes, the mindset, the strategies, the secrets to achieve that singular act of creation, that technological miracle.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to unpack some of Thiel's, well, quite contrarian views. We'll get into why he thinks competition is actually destructive.
Which is counterintuitive for many.
Totally. And why monopoly isn't necessarily a dirty word, but maybe the goal for a healthy, innovative company. And why planning, like having a real plan, beats just being agile and reacting all the time.
So the idea is if you stick with us, you'll come away with a much deeper grasp of the questions that really separate the companies that endure, the ones that create lasting value, from all the rest. Okay, so the book kicks off right away with a challenge. Chapter 1, the challenge of the future. He lays out his method for finding people who think differently. It all starts with this core interview question he asks.
The famous one. What important truth do very few people agree with you on?
That's the one.
And what I find really interesting is how he immediately explains why it's so hard to answer. It's not about pure intellect, is it?
Not primarily, no.
Yeah.
He argues it's more psychological. It takes courage. Think about it. Most of what we learn in school, in business, it's all consensus. It's agreed upon knowledge.
So stating something unpopular.
Exactly. Requires guts. He even says something like, brilliant thinking is rare, sure, but the courage to voice something unpopular, something not already vetted by the mainstream, that's even rarer than genius.
That makes sense. And this idea immediately leads into his fundamental framework for the whole book, how we define progress. He sets up these two distinct paths.
Right. Path 1 is horizontal progress, 1 to N. That's extensive. It's copying successful models. The prime example he gives is globalization. Think of China rapidly adopting and scaling Western technologies and models.
And path 2.
Path 2 is vertical progress, 0 to 1. This is intensive. It's about doing new things. And this is what he calls technology. This distinction is so central, it leads to maybe the most important quote defining the book's whole purpose, right there in the first chapter.
Which one is that?
It's simple, but profound. Vertical or intensive progress means doing new things, going from 0 to 1.
And that quote really sets the stage for his own answer to that contrarian question, his big claim about the future.
Yes. His answer is basically, most people think the future will be defined by globalization, by spreading existing things everywhere. But he argues technology matters more. That 0 to 1 leap is actually the critical factor.
Why more? What's the danger of just globalization?
Well, he's pretty stark about it. Globalization without new technology, just spreading our current, often resource-intensive ways of doing things to billions more people, he sees that as environmentally catastrophic. It's unsustainable.
So without genuine technological breakthroughs, the future looks bleak.
That's the implication. We need those 0 to 1 miracles, as he calls them, new ways to do more with less, essentially, to ensure the 21st century is peaceful and prosperous. That's why technology, for Thiel, holds the key, more so than just spreading the old ways.
Okay, so if technology is the key, who actually creates it? He seems skeptical of big organizations doing it.
Very skeptical.
Yeah.
He argues large bureaucracies, whether governments or huge corporations, tend to be too slow. They're bogged down by internal politics, risk aversion. They're just not structured for radical innovation.
So where does it come from?
Primarily from small groups. From startups. He's his great definition. A startup is the largest group of people you can convince of a plan to build a different future.
I like that. A plan to build a different future.
Yeah. Their power lies in their ability to question everything, to rethink business from the ground up, because they aren't tied down by legacy systems or decades of ingrained thinking. They can start from zero.
Okay, so we've got the philosophical basis, the need for 0 to 1 thinking, primarily from startups. Now, Chapter 2, Party Like It's 1999, takes us into the recent history that really shaped or maybe warped our current approach to building things, the dot-com bubble and its aftermath.
Absolutely. That period, roughly late 98 to early 2000, was just pure, irrational exuberance. Money flowing everywhere, crazy valuations.
Then the crash.
And then the crash, March 2000. It wasn't just a financial correction. He argues it caused a deep psychological shift, especially in Silicon Valley. All that wild techno-optimism. It got replaced by extreme caution, defensiveness almost.
He lived through this directly with PayPal, right? There's that PayPal mania anecdote.
Oh yeah, their initial goal was huge, create a brand new digital currency. That first product didn't quite work out, so they pivoted to email payments. But the big hurdle was getting people to actually use it.
How do you get critical mass for a new payment system?
Exactly. They figured they needed at least 1 million users fast. Advertising was too slow, too expensive.
Yeah.
So they landed on this, well, completely unsustainable strategy.
Paying people.
Paying people. They paid new users $10 to sign up and another $10 for every friend they referred. They were literally burning through investor cash like crazy just to buy growth, to get that network effect started.
Which leads to that quote that perfectly captures the madness of the time.
Right. In this kind of environment, acting sanely began to seem eccentric.
That's such a telling line. It shows how the bubble mentality forced even rational people, and Thiel and his team were certainly rational, into making these incredibly risky, fast moves just to survive.
They had to. They raised a massive $100 million round in March 2000, right at the peak, basically just to buy themselves runway as the whole market started collapsing around them.
Wow. Talk about timing.
Pure luck on the timing, arguably. But the experience of that bubble and crash, Thiel argues, led Silicon Valley to learn the wrong lessons. It created these 4 deeply ingrained dogmas, these sort of defensive rules that still hold sway today.
And he believes these dogmas actively prevent 0 to 1 thinking.
He thinks they're poison for true innovation. Let's break them down, because he systematically dismantles each one.
Okay, dogma 1.
Dogma 1. Make only small, incremental steps. The thinking was, grand visions lead to bubbles and crashes, so play it safe. Thiel's counter. Boldness is less risky than triviality. Aiming too small guarantees you won't achieve anything significant. You have to risk boldness for 0 to 1.
Makes sense. Dogma 2.
Dogma 2. Stay lean and flexible. This is the whole lean startup idea taken to an extreme. Avoid planning, just experiment and pivot constantly. Thiel says, nope. A bad plan is better than no plan. You need a definite vision, a map, even if it needs adjusting later. Wandering aimlessly won't get you to a breakthrough.
Okay, dogma 3. Feels related.
Dogma 3. Improve on the competition. The idea here was, look at what's already successful and just make a slightly better version. Find existing markets. Thiel argues this is a trap. Competitive markets destroy profits. If you're just copying or slightly improving, you're entering a red ocean, not creating a blue one. You're setting yourself up for failure.
And the last one, dogma 4.
Dogma 4. Focus only on product, not sales. This is the classic, if you build it, they will come, fallacy. The belief that a great product sells itself. Thiel's response is blunt. Sales matters just as much as product. Distribution is often the real bottleneck, not the technology itself.
So the big takeaway from this chapter is escape the dogma.
Pretty much. If you want to build the next great company, the next 0 to 1 breakthrough, you have to consciously reject these reactive, fear-based rules learned from the crash. You have to think for yourself from first principles.
Okay, thinking for yourself leads directly into chapter 3. All happy companies are different. And this chapter drops arguably the book's most controversial bomb, his argument against competition and for monopoly.
Yeah, this is where he really challenges conventional economic wisdom. The core idea here is what he calls the value capture problem. Meaning it's not enough just to create value for customers or society. A business has to actually capture some of that value in the form of profits to be sustainable and successful.
And he uses that striking airline versus Google comparison to make a point.
It's incredibly effective. Think about airlines. They create massive value, moving millions of people, enabling global commerce, hundreds of billions in revenue. Yet the industry is so brutally competitive that in one specific year he looked at, the average profit per passenger trip was a mere 37 cents.
37 cents, that's basically nothing.
Exactly. Now contrast that with Google. At the time, Google was capturing something like 21% of its revenue as profit. Why? Because it had established a near monopoly in search. That ability to capture value made Google vastly more valuable financially than the entire U.S. airline industry combined.
So the intense competition in airlines destroys their ability to capture value, even though they create a lot of it.
Precisely. And this leads him to challenge the textbook ideal of perfect competition, which brings us to a really key quote. Capitalism is premised on the accumulation of capital, but under perfect competition, all profits get competed away.
Okay, but I have to push back a bit here. Isn't competition good? Doesn't it drive down prices for consumers, force companies to be efficient? It feels like the bedrock of a healthy market. Why frame it as a negative?
That's the standard view, for sure. And competition can benefit consumers in the short term with lower prices. But Thiel's argument is about long-term value creation and innovation. Under perfect competition, where everyone is just scrambling for tiny margins, no one makes enough profit to invest significantly in long-term R&D, to take big risks, to plan for a radically different future.
So competition leads to stasis.
In his view, yes. It leads to a state where companies are just fighting for survival day to day. A creative monopoly, on the other hand, one earned by creating something uniquely valuable, generates profits. And those profits give the company breathing room. They allow for long-term planning, ambitious research, even ethical considerations like Google's old "don't be evil" motto. Think of Apple using its iPhone profits to fund years of R&D for the next breakthrough. Monopoly profits fuel innovation.
So a creative monopoly isn't about exploiting customers, but about having the stability to build the future.
That's the argument. It's earned by being so much better that you don't have direct competition for a while. But then he points out something interesting. Both monopolists and companies stuck in competition tend to lie about their situation.
How so?
Monopolists, like Google, downplay their dominance to avoid regulatory heat. They'll say, oh, we're just a small player in the huge global advertising market or the overall tech market. They expand their market definition.
Okay. And competitors?
Competitors do the opposite. They shrink their market definition to make themselves sound unique and dominant, even when they're not. Like, if you open a new British restaurant in Palo Alto, you might claim you're the only place for authentic British food in this specific neighborhood, ignoring the fact that you're competing with every other restaurant nearby. They lie to themselves and investors to avoid facing the brutal reality of competition.
So the truth gets distorted from both ends.
Right, which leads to his conclusion, riffing on Tolstoy. All happy companies are different. Each one earns a monopoly by solving a unique problem. They succeed by escaping the sameness of competition. And conversely, all failed companies are alike. They failed to escape competition. The key is earning that unique position. Okay, so after making the economic case against competition in Chapter 3, Chapter 4, The Ideology of Competition, digs into the psychological and cultural reasons why we're so obsessed with it. He argues competition isn't just an economic state, it's an ideology.
An ideology? How?
He believes it's deeply ingrained in us, especially through our education system. Think about grades, class rankings, standardized tests, elite college admissions, competing for prestigious internships or jobs. It trains us to focus on beating the person next to us on well-defined tracks, rather than creating something entirely new off the track.
It becomes a zero-sum game focused on status and rivalry, not necessarily on value creation.
Exactly. And he shares that really poignant personal story about his own experience competing like crazy for a Supreme Court clerkship. He actually got one, which is incredibly prestigious.
The pinnacle of that particular competition.
Right. But later, he realized the immense opportunity cost. Winning that ultimate competition distracted him from what he really wanted to do, which was build new things. It channeled his energy into a predefined path.
Which leads to that rather bleak quote about Rhodes Scholars.
Yeah. All Rhodes Scholars had a great future in their past. It sounds harsh, but his point is that these hyper-competitive tracks often absorb the most talented people and trap them. They spend their prime creative years winning prizes that, in the long run, might divert them from truly original 0-1 work.
So competition doesn't just destroy profits, it can destroy potential.
That's the argument.
Yeah.
And he extends this by modeling business competition explicitly on war. But not just any war specifically, a Shakespearean tragedy.
Okay, unpack that. Marx versus Shakespeare.
Right. Marx saw conflict arising from fundamental differences like class struggle. But Shakespeare, Thiel argues, showed us conflict often rises from sameness. Think Romeo and Juliet. The Montagues and Capulets were basically identical families locked in a pointless, destructive feud because they were too similar.
And business rivalries are like that?
He argues yes. Competitors become obsessed with each other. They start imitating each other's moves, reacting to each other, instead of focusing on the customer or on true innovation. It becomes a destructive mirror dance.
The Microsoft versus Google example fits perfectly here.
Absolutely. They started in different areas, operating systems versus search. But their intense rivalry led them down paths of imitation. Microsoft launched Bing to chase Google search. Google launched Chrome OS to counter Windows. They were so focused on matching each other
That they missed the bigger shift happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which allowed Apple, coming from a different angle with the iPhone and integrated mobile experience, to completely disrupt both of them. This illustrates the point in another key quote. Just as war cost the Montagues and Capulets their children, it cost Microsoft and Google their dominance. Apple came along and overtook them all. Focusing on the rival blinds you to the real future. Wow. You even see this in smaller, almost silly ways, right? Like that mobile payment dongle war. Yeah, the shape war for card readers. Square had the square one. So competitors came out with a half moon, then a cylinder, then a triangle, all fighting over this trivial aesthetic difference instead of focusing on the core service or market. It's mimicry born of rivalry.
So the strategic implication is clear.
Yeah.
Wet. Avoid these wars if possible.
Avoid them or end them decisively. He mentions merging PayPal with Elon Musk's X.com as a way to quickly end a potentially destructive rivalry before it consumed both companies. The advice is stark. Either don't fight these symmetrical battles at all, or if you must, make it decisive. Prolonged trench warfare is the worst outcome.
All right, so if escaping competition is crucial, Chapter 5, Last Mover Advantage, tells us how to build a business that not only avoids it now, but stays dominant far into the future. This is all about durability and focusing on future cash flows.
Exactly. This chapter shifts the focus from immediate gains to long-term value. Thiel argues that the real value of a company today isn't its current profits or revenue, but its expected ability to generate cash flows far into the future.
That explains why, say, a company like Twitter, even when it was losing money, could be valued so much higher than a profitable but declining legacy business like the New York Times.
Precisely. The market was betting, rightly or wrongly, that Twitter had the potential to build a durable monopoly in its space and generate massive profits a decade or more down the line. The Times had profits now, but its future looked much less certain, more competitive.
This directly contradicts the typical Silicon Valley obsession with short-term growth metrics, doesn't it? Users, engagement, quarterly numbers.
It does. Thiel calls this the durability trap. Companies like Zynga or Groupon had explosive initial growth, huge user numbers, but they weren't built to last. They focused on those near-term metrics without solving the fundamental question of long-term defensibility.
Which leads to that really critical diagnostic question he poses.
Yeah, it's a gut check for any founder or investor. If you focus on near-term growth above all else, you miss the most important question you should be asking. Will this business still be around a decade from now?
That simple question changes the entire frame. If the answer is likely no, then all the hockey stick growth charts in the world don't really matter.
They're vanity metrics.
Yeah.
So how do you build for durability? Thiel identifies 4 key characteristics that nearly all durable monopolies share. You ideally need all 4.
Okay, let's list them out. Number 1.
Proprietary technology.
Yeah.
And crucially, it can't just be marginally better. It needs to be at least 10x better than the closest substitute on some key dimension. If it's only 2x better, customers might not switch, or the cost of educating the market and selling will eat up your advantage.
Can you give some 10x examples?
Sure. Amazon initially offered literally 10 times the selection of books compared to a physical bookstore. PayPal offered a payment method that was arguably 10 times faster and easier than mailing checks for eBay auctions. Apple's integrated hardware-software services ecosystem provides a user experience that's arguably 10x better for many people than patching together alternatives. It has to be a breakthrough.
Okay, 10x tech. What's number 2?
Network effects. This is familiar. The product or service becomes more valuable as more people use it. Social networks are the classic example. But Thiel adds a crucial nuance here.
Which is?
You have to start small. Trying to build a network for everyone, everywhere, from day one usually fails because it's not valuable to the first few users. Facebook famously started only at Harvard. That created intense density and immediate value for those first users. Then they expanded methodically to other colleges, then eventually everyone. Start niche and dense.
Got it. Start small to leverage network effects. Number 3.
Economies of scale. The business needs to get stronger as it gets bigger. This usually means high fixed costs, like R&D or building a factory, but low marginal cost for producing additional units. Software is the perfect example. Writing the code is expensive, but distributing another copy costs almost nothing. A good monopoly business should have a structure that naturally scales well.
Makes sense. And the last one, number 4.
Branding. A strong brand, like Apple's, is incredibly powerful. It creates customer loyalty, pricing power, and a halo effect. But, and this is key, the brand has to be built on substance. It has to be anchored in the other 3 characteristics: the great tech, the network effects, the scale. You can't just slap a new logo and marketing campaign on a weak underlying business and expect it to create a durable monopoly. Think of Yahoo's many failed attempts at rebranding.
So brand is the capstone, built on a solid foundation.
Exactly. And the strategy to achieve this durable monopoly, he lays it out clearly. 1. Start small. Dominate a tiny specific niche market that you can realistically own completely, like PayPal targeting only the high-volume power sellers on eBay initially. Resist the temptation to go after huge competitive markets right away. 2. Scale up. Once you own that niche, methodically expand into adjacent, slightly broader markets. Like Amazon moving from books to music to videos, eventually to everything. It's a deliberate, sequenced expansion.
And finally,
3. Be the last mover. This flips the common first-mover advantage idea. Thiel argues it's often better to be the last company to make a significant breakthrough in a market, creating the definitive dominant version that lasts. Focus on the end game, not just being first out the gate.
okay, this idea of deliberate strategy, of aiming for the end game, leads perfectly into Chapter 6, You Are Not a Lottery Ticket. This chapter is a direct assault on the idea that startup success is mostly about luck.
It really is. Thiel fundamentally rejects that premise. He argues that success isn't random chance. It's the result of deliberate design and planning. It's about agency, not luck.
And he frames this argument using those 4 distinct ways people view the future. This felt like a really useful diagnostic tool for understanding different cultures or even company mindsets.
It's a fantastic framework. Let's quickly recap them. 1. Definite optimism. This mindset believes the future will be better, and we know how to make it better through specific plans and grand projects. Think of the West from the 17th century up to the 1960s, building canals, railroads, the Empire State Building, the Apollo program. They had concrete visions.
Okay, definite optimism. What's next?
2. Indefinite optimism. This is the dominant view in the U.S. since the early 80s, Thiel argues. The future will somehow get better, but we don't really know how, so we don't make concrete plans. Instead, we focus on process, options, diversification. Think finance, management consulting, keeping options open rather than making a specific bet.
So optimism without a plan. Then the pessimistic views.
3. Definite pessimism. The future looks bleak, but we know why and we have a plan to cope. Thiel sees modern China embodying this, knowing resources are scarce and challenges are immense, leading to intense planned copying and building to prepare for hardship.
And finally,
4. Indefinite pessimism. The future looks bleak, and we have no idea what to do about it. He sees this in modern Europe, a sense of drift, managing decline, reacting to crises, rather than proactively shaping the future. Bureaucratic stagnation.
and Thiel is particularly critical of the second one, indefinite optimism, the prevailing mindset in the U.S. for decades now.
Extremely critical. He argues it's fundamentally unsustainable. It relies on vague notions of progress happening automatically, almost like Darwinian evolution. This mindset fuels things like the lean startup methodology, constant iteration, pivoting, A/B testing, everything without an overarching, bold plan.
And the problem with that is,
It might help you find a local maximum, a slightly better version of what you're already doing. But it will never lead you to a global maximum, a truly revolutionary 0-to-1 breakthrough. You're essentially wandering around hoping to stumble onto greatness.
which brings us to that powerful, quote, challenging the lean approach.
Yeah, he puts it very directly. Iteration without a bold plan won't take you from 0 to 1. You need a destination in mind. Constant tinkering without a map just leads you in circles. It directly refutes the idea that you can just react your way to radical innovation.
So the antidote to this indefinite wandering is a return to definite design, having a specific vision and a concrete plan.
Absolutely. He points to figures like Steve Jobs. Apple's success wasn't built on endless pivoting. It came from meticulously planned, multi-year product roadmaps driven by Jobs' definite vision for what technology should be.
And Mark Zuckerberg, too.
Zuckerberg's rejection of Yahoo's $1 billion offer for Facebook back in 2006 is another prime example. Everyone thought he was crazy. But Zuckerberg had a definite belief in where Facebook could go, a vision far larger than that offer. That conviction came from a plan, not just optionality.
So the ultimate message of the chapter is about taking control.
Yes, it's about agency. You have the most power, the highest agency, when you commit to a definite plan for a large endeavor, like a startup aiming for 0 to 1. Don't just buy lottery tickets and hope for the best. You are not a lottery ticket. Design your future. Okay, so if you're going to make a definite plan, Chapter 7, Follow the Money, tells you what kind of outcome you need to plan for, and the answer is something extremely rare and disproportionately successful because the world operates on a power law.
The power law, also known as the Pareto principle or the Matthew effect, the idea that outcomes are incredibly unequal, 80-20 rule on steroids, basically.
Exactly. We see it everywhere in nature and society. A tiny fraction of earthquakes account for most of the energy released. A few cities dominate population and economic activity. A small number of authors sell the vast majority of books. Distribution is wildly skewed. Not a nice bell curve.
And Thiel argues this applies crucially to venture capital investing.
Absolutely critically. He says VC returns don't follow a normal distribution at all. They follow a power law. Most startups in a portfolio will fail or return very little. A few might do okay, but the entire success of the fund usually rests on just 1 or 2 massive runaway hits the unicorns.
Which leads to that shocking secret of VC.
Yeah, it's a stark reality. The biggest secret in venture capital is that the best investment in a successful fund equals or outperforms the entire rest of the fund combined. Think about that. One single company's success can be greater than all the other successes and failures put together.
Wow. If that's true, then the standard advice about diversifying your investments, that completely breaks down for VC, doesn't it?
It's the opposite of what you should do. The power law dictates the strategy for VCs. Rule number 1. Only invest in companies that have a credible potential to return the entire value of the fund by themselves. They need that massive upside potential.
And rule number 2.
Because rule number 1 is so incredibly restrictive, very few companies have that potential.
Huh.
You basically can't have any other fixed rules. You can't filter deals based on sector or stage or geography in a rigid way.
Yeah.
You have to be open to finding that one outlier, wherever it might be, and bet big on it when you find it. Spray and pray, investing small amounts in lots of companies, is a recipe for mediocrity in VC because you'll likely miss capitalizing fully on the big winner.
Okay, that makes sense for VCs managing billions, but what about for the average person listening? How does the power law apply to us?
Thiel argues it applies profoundly to our biggest investment, our career. We're all investors, investing our time, our energy, our education. And society teaches us to diversify, get a well-rounded education, develop multiple skills, keep our options open.
Which sounds sensible.
But if life and careers also follow a power law, then diversification might be the wrong strategy. Thiel argues it leads to many-sided mediocrity. Instead, the power law suggests you should focus relentlessly. Find the one thing you can potentially be exceptionally good at, something that could create disproportionate value in the future, and double down on that.
So specialize radically instead of hedging.
That's the implication. It's better, he argues, to have a tiny fraction of ownership, like 0.01%, in a truly dominant future-defining company like Google, than to own 100% of a small, struggling business that never escapes competition. It's a call for extreme focus and conviction in choosing where to invest your life's energy.
All right, so we need definite plans focused on rare, massive success driven by the power law. But where do these massive opportunities actually come from? Chapter 8, Secrets, argues they come from finding secrets.
Exactly. A secret, in Thiel's definition, isn't something mystical. It's simply an important truth about the world that very few people recognize or believe. It's something that's hard to discover, but possible. And finding such a secret is the prerequisite for building a truly unique 0 to 1 company, something nobody else is building because nobody else sees the opportunity.
But why aren't more people looking for secrets? It feels like today there's a lot of skepticism about whether there are any big secrets left to find.
There is. Thiel identifies a few reasons for this skepticism. One is a kind of pessimism, maybe linked to that end of history idea, or even the Unabomber's manifesto claiming all the important problems were already solved. What's left is either easy or impossible.
Another reason is just social trends, right? Incrementalism in academia, risk aversion in corporations.
Yeah, and complacency among elites who are comfortable with the status quo. Plus, the idea of flatness. The belief that if a secret existed, surely one of the billions of smart, connected people around the globe would have found it already.
So this skepticism becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't believe secrets exist,
You won't bother looking for them. That's why Thiel emphasizes the importance of belief. He has that great line, "Belief in secrets is an effective truth." You have to fundamentally believe that there are still important things left to discover, that breakthroughs are possible, just to even start the search. He uses the example of Andrew Wiles, who spent years in isolation, proving Fermat's last theorem, precisely because he believed a solution, a secret hidden in mathematics, existed.
And often these secrets aren't incredibly complex, are they? Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight.
Very often. Think about Airbnb. The secret was that there was this massive untapped supply of lodging, spare rooms in people's homes, and a corresponding demand from travelers looking for alternatives to hotels. It was a secret about how people value space and trust. Or Uberlift, the secret was simply that you could efficiently connect existing drivers with existing riders using mobile tech. These were fundamentally simple insights about leveraging existing assets or behaviors that everyone else had overlooked or dismissed.
Because they seemed too simple or unconventional.
Probably. Thiel divides secrets into two broad categories.
What are they?
First, there are secrets of nature. These are discoveries about the physical world, how physics works, new biology, maybe finding a cure for cancer. Hard science secrets.
And the second type?
Secrets about people. These are truths about what humans want, what they value, how they behave, especially things they might not admit or even realize themselves. Examples he gives include the secret that competition destroys profits, which most business people deny, or the complex, often hidden truths about human nutrition.
Okay, so you find a secret, either about nature or about people. What do you do with it? You can't just shout it from the rooftops.
No, definitely not. If it's a truly valuable secret, you need to protect it. And the best way to do that, and to act on it, is within a company. This leads to that really powerful metaphor for what a great startup actually is.
The conspiracy metaphor.
Yeah. A great company is a conspiracy to change the world. When you share your secret, the recipient becomes a fellow conspirator. You're building a small, trusted group united by this unique, non-consensus belief about how the world works or how it could work. The company becomes the vehicle for executing the conspiracy.
Okay, so building this conspiracy requires getting the initial setup absolutely right. Chapter 9, Foundations, is all about the critical importance of the very beginning. This is where we get Thiel's law.
That's right. Thiel's law is simple but stark. A startup messed up at its foundation cannot be fixed. He argues that the earliest decisions, who the founders are, how ownership is structured, the initial culture have an outsized, almost permanent impact, like the first few moments after the Big Bang setting the course for the entire universe, or the compromises made at the U.S. Constitutional Convention still shaping politics today.
So the very first decision is the most critical.
Absolutely. And that first decision is choosing your co-founders. He calls it founding matrimony. It should be like getting married. You need deep trust, shared history, complementary skills. He's famously skeptical of founding teams who just met at a networking event or a business school mixer. That lack of a pre-existing bond is a major red flag for him.
Because that relationship hasn't been tested.
Exactly. Once you have the founding team, the next critical thing is aligning the three key aspects of power within any organization.
We're sure.
Ownership, who holds the equity, the legal title. Possession, who actually runs the company day to day, the managers and employees. And control, who formally governs the company, typically the board of directors.
And these need to be in sync.
Critically, misalignment between these three is, he argues, the root cause of most internal conflict and dysfunction. If the board control constantly disagrees with the CEO, possession, you get paralysis. If ownership is widely dispersed among people who aren't involved day to day, you can lose focus. He uses the DMV as the ultimate example of misaligned incentives leading to bureaucratic nightmare.
How do you keep them aligned, practically?
One key piece of advice is on board size. Keep it small. Ideal is 3 members, definitely no more than 5 for a private company. Larger boards diffuse responsibility, slow down decisions, and often lack real engagement. Small boards force clarity and accountability.
What about the team itself? Commitment levels?
Total commitment is non-negotiable in the early days. Everyone needs to be fully on the bus or off the bus. He argues strongly against part-time employees, extensive use of consultants, or even remote work in the very early stages. Why? Because these arrangements inherently create misalignment. Part-timers aren't fully invested in the long-term outcome. Their incentives are different.
Okay, full commitment. How should they be compensated to reinforce that?
This is another contrarian point. Cash is not king in an early-stage 0-to-1 startup. Paying high cash salaries incentivizes people to protect the status quo, to minimize risk, and to think short-term. He suggests early-stage CEOs should probably earn less than $150,000 in cash.
So what is the right incentive?
Equity. He argues equity is the only compensation tool that effectively aligns everyone, founders, employees, investors, toward creating long-term value. It gives everyone a stake in the future success built on that initial secret. It makes them true conspirators, which reinforces the main point. As a founder, your first job is to get the first things right, because you cannot build a great company on a flawed foundation.
But he also warns about being careful with how equity details are shared.
Yeah, he advises keeping the specific equity grants secret between individuals. Making it all public knowledge can breed resentment and jealousy. Why does she get more than me? Creating that internal autoimmune disease where the company starts attacking itself. Align with equity, but manage the specific details carefully. Building on those foundations, Chapter 10, The Mechanics of Mafia, dives deep into the culture required for a 0-to-1 company. And the core message is, culture is the company, it's not the superficial stuff.
Right, not the free snacks, the ping pong tables, the sushi chefs.
Exactly. Those are just perks. Real culture is the substance. How people work together, the shared mission, the intensity of focus. A great startup culture, Thiel argues, should feel less like a purely professional, transactional workplace and more like a close-knit team on a critical mission.
Which is where the mafia idea comes in, referencing the PayPal mafia.
Precisely. He wanted PayPal to be more than just a job. He wanted to be a place where people were genuinely excited to work specifically with each other, united by the challenge and the shared intensity. That bond, that shared experience forged in the early difficult days, is what created the network that later spawned so many other successful companies. SpaceX, Tesla, LinkedIn, YouTube, Yelp, Palantir.
That list is incredible. So how do you intentionally build that kind of mafia culture? It starts with recruiting, right?
Definitely. Recruiting shouldn't be generic. Don't just look for general talent. You need to recruit specific people who resonate deeply with your unique mission, your secret. You're looking for conspirators, remember.
So the key question a founder needs to answer for potential hire isn't just, why work here, but something more specific.
Yeah, Thiel suggests framing it like this. Why should brilliant employee number 20 join your tiny, risky startup when they could get much higher pay and prestige at Google? The only compelling answers involve the uniqueness of the mission and the quality of the specific team they'd be joining. It leads to this idea of homogeneity. Everybody at your company should be different in the same way, a tribe of like-minded people fiercely devoted to the company's mission.
Different in the same way. That sounds paradoxical.
It means diversity in skills and backgrounds, perhaps, but unified by a shared belief in the core mission and a similar way of thinking about the problem you're solving. At PayPal, he notes, it was a tribe of similar kinds of nerds, which allowed for very fast, high-bandwidth communication and decision-making. That shared wavelength is efficient.
He even compares this intense, unified culture to, well, a cult.
He does. He argues that successful startups often resemble cults more than they resemble traditional companies or, say, consulting firms, where people are just doing transactional work. There's a fanaticism, an absolute dedication, driven by the belief that they are right about a secret everyone else is missing.
Okay, so you've recruited this tribe. How do you keep them working together effectively, avoiding internal conflict?
His core management advice here is incredibly simple. Do one thing. Assign every single person in the company one primary, unique responsibility that only they own.
Why is that so important?
Because it eliminates overlapping competition for the same roles or tasks. If two people are responsible for the same thing, they'll inevitably start competing with each other, maybe even undermining each other. Defining clear, unique roles fosters collaboration and prevents the company from developing that autoimmune disease where internal conflicts drain energy away from the external mission. All right, so you've got the foundation, the culture, the team, but now you actually have to get your creation out into the world. Chapter 11, If You Build It, Will They Come, tackles distribution, and it's a direct challenge to a common blind spot, especially among technical founders.
The blind spot being?
The field of dreams fallacy. The deeply ingrained belief among engineers and product people that if you just build a superior product, customers will magically find it and flock to it.
If you build it, they will come.
Exactly. And Thiel's brutal about this. He states it very clearly early on. The engineer's grail is a product great enough that it sells itself, but anyone who would actually say this about a real product must be lying.
Ouch. So products don't sell themselves?
Never. Or at least it's incredibly rare. He argues that founders, especially technical ones, consistently overestimate the difficulty of building the product and tragically underestimate the difficulty of distribution sales, Marketing, getting the product into customers' hands.
And distribution is often seen as less important or maybe even distasteful.
Often, yes. Sales and marketing can seem like manipulative or irrational arts to engineers focused on logic and code. But Thiel argues they are absolutely vital. He even points out how sales is often hidden. People don't like feeling sold to. So salespeople use different titles, account executive, business development, investment banker, to mask the function. But make no mistake, selling is happening.
So if sales is critical, how do you figure out the right way to sell your product? It depends on the product, right?
It depends massively on the price point and the customer. The fundamental rule is that your customer lifetime value, CLV,
Right.
the total profit you expect to make from a customer over time, must be significantly higher than your customer acquisition cost.
Aye.
How much it costs you to get that customer in the first place.
CLV, CAC, hack.
Okay.
Makes sense.
And based on the average deal size or product price, different distribution strategies become viable. P lays out a spectrum.
Okay, let's walk through it. What's at the high end?
Complex sales. This is for deals worth millions, maybe tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. Think selling enterprise software to Fortune 500s, or Palantir selling to government agencies, or SpaceX selling launch contracts. Here, the CEO is often personally involved in closing maybe just a handful of huge deals per year. It's relationship-driven, often political.
Okay, complex sales for huge deals. What's next down?
Personal sales. This is for products typically in the $10,000 to $100,000 range. You can't afford for the CEO to close every deal, but you can build and scale a dedicated sales team following a structured process. Think companies like Box selling cloud storage to businesses, starting small within one department and expanding.
So a traditional Salesforce model, what about lower price points?
This is where it gets tricky. Thiel identifies the dead zone, roughly around the $1,000 price point. Here, the product is too expensive for purely automated marketing or viral growth to work effectively, but it's too cheap to justify the cost of a direct salesperson. This distribution challenge is why so many potentially useful products aimed at small or medium businesses fail. They can't crack the economics of distribution.
The dead zone sounds ominous. What's below that?
Marketing and advertising. This works for products with broad appeal and relatively low price points, where you can reach millions of potential customers through channels like TV ads, online ads, content marketing. Think consumer goods, or companies like Warby Parker selling glasses online. But it requires significant budget, which early-stage startups usually lack. He mentions PayPal's early attempt at a celebrity ad campaign flopping because they couldn't compete with incumbents like Priceline.
And the final category, the holy grail for many startups.
Viral marketing. This is where the product itself is inherently designed to spread. Users bring in other users just by using the product. Think social networks or PayPal's early referral program where paying users $20, $10 each fueled exponential growth, 7% daily growth at its peak. But true viral marketing is rare and hard to engineer. It requires deep understanding of user incentives.
So a whole spectrum of channels. What's the key takeaway for founders trying to figure this out?
The power law of distribution applies here too. Most companies fail because zero distribution channels work effectively for them. Success usually comes from finding and mastering just one channel that really works for your specific product and market, and then pouring all your resources into dominating that single channel. Don't try to do a little bit of everything. Find your one killer channel.
And finally, he makes the point that everyone is in sales, right?
Absolutely. Even if you're an engineer or a designer, you're selling. You're selling the vision to potential hires, selling the company's progress to investors, selling your ideas to your colleagues. He ends with that punchy line. Look around. If you don't see any salespeople, you're the salesperson. Distribution and persuasion are everyone's job.
Moving from selling the company to the technology itself, Chapter 12, Man and Machine, tackles a huge topic, especially relevant today. The relationship between humans and computers, particularly the fear of automation replacing jobs.
Yeah, this is a really important chapter. Thiel directly confronts the Luddite fear, the idea that computers will inevitably substitute for human workers, leading to mass unemployment. He argues this fear is based on a flawed analogy.
Fuck, how?
It mistakenly applies the logic of globalization, where low-wage humans compete with high-wage humans for the same jobs, to technology. But humans and computers, he argues, are fundamentally different. They have different strengths. Therefore, they are primarily complementary, not substitutes.
So it's not man versus machine, but man and machine.
Exactly. Humans excel at things requiring judgment, complex decision-making in novel situations, creativity, planning, understanding context, what you might call strong AI tasks. Computers excel at brute force data processing, pattern recognition in massive data sets, speed and scale more like specialized or narrow AI.
He uses that cat identification example, right?
Yeah, it's a great illustration. At the time the book was written, even a powerful supercomputer might only identify a cat in an image with, say, 75% accuracy after analyzing millions of examples, whereas a 4-year-old child can do it almost perfectly, instantly, with very little prior data. It highlights the difference between statistical pattern matching and genuine understanding or judgment.
So if they're complementary, technology isn't the enemy.
Quite the opposite. Thiel argues technology specifically, leveraging computers to enhance human capabilities, is the only way for developed economies to escape the intense competitive pressures of globalization. The economic gains from humans working with smart machines will be far greater than the gains from simply trading with other low-cost humans.
The future, then, lies in building systems that combine the strengths of both. Man-machine symbiosis.
That's the core idea. He calls them hybrid systems. And this isn't just theory. It's fundamental to how his own successful companies operate.
Like at PayPal with fraud detection.
Exactly. Early PayPal was almost destroyed by massive fraud, like $10 million a month at one point. Purely automated systems couldn't catch the clever fraudsters, and purely human review couldn't scale. The solution was a hybrid system they internally called Igor. The computer algorithms flagged millions of potentially suspicious transactions based on patterns, but then human analysts made the final judgment calls on the ambiguous cases. That combination saved the company.
And Palantir is built entirely on this principle.
It is. Palantir software is designed to integrate and analyze vast amounts of data from different sources, surfacing potential connections and insights that a human could never find alone. But then, human analysts use their expertise, judgment, and contextual understanding to interpret those insights, ask further questions, and ultimately provide actionable intelligence, whether it's tracking terrorists, identifying fraud rings, or optimizing supply chains. It's intelligence augmentation, not replacement.
Which leads to his vision for the future of valuable companies.
Yes, summarized in this key quote, which feels even more relevant now with the rise of generative AI. The most valuable companies in the future won't ask what problems can be solved with computers alone. Instead, they'll ask, how can computers help humans solve hard problems?
That really reframes the whole AI discussion. It's not about computers taking over jobs from lawyers, doctors, teachers, analysts.
It's about computers becoming incredibly powerful tools for those professionals, allowing them to handle more complexity, access more information, automate routine tasks, and ultimately leverage their uniquely human skills, judgment, empathy, communication, creative problem-solving much more effectively. Technology enables higher agency. Okay, so we have these principles. 0 to 1, monopoly, definite planning, man-machine complementarity. Chapter 13, Seeing Green, provides a stark case study of what happens when these principles are ignored using the clean tech bubble of the 2000s.
Right. This was a period where huge amounts of money poured into clean energy startups, solar companies, battery tech, but it mostly ended in failure.
Massive failure. Thiel notes over $50 billion in venture capital was invested, far more than went into the internet during its boom, yet the results were dismal. Companies like Solyndra became infamous symbols of collapse. Dozens of solar manufacturers went bankrupt around 2012. It was a disaster.
Why? The mission clean energy seemed important, even essential.
It was important. But Thiel argues the businesses themselves were fundamentally flawed because they failed to answer the 7 critical questions that any company needs to answer to build a durable monopoly. He uses these 7 questions as a diagnostic tool to dissect why clean tech went wrong.
This feels like a really useful checklist for evaluating any ambitious venture. Let's run through them for clean tech. Question 1.
The engineering question. Can you create breakthrough technology instead of just incremental improvements? Clean tech mostly failed here. He points to Solyndra's fancy cylindrical solar cells, which are actually less efficient and more expensive than conventional flat panels. They rarely achieved that necessary 10x improvement.
Okay. Question 2.
The timing question. Is now the right time to start your particular business? Clean tech timing was often based on wishful thinking or flawed analogies. People assumed solar progress would follow Moore's law for microprocessors, but the underlying physics and manufacturing challenges were completely different, leading to much slower linear improvement.
Bad timing. Question 3.
The monopoly question. Are you starting with a big share of a small market? Clean tech companies did the opposite. They aimed for a slice of the massive, multi-trillion-dollar global energy market from day one. This meant instant, brutal competition with huge incumbents and state-backed players. They failed to define and dominate a defensible niche first.
Okay, no niche domination. Question 4.
The people question. Do you have the right team? Thiel argues many clean tech companies were led by suits, non-technical salespeople or general business types who looked good raising money, but lacked the deep technical expertise needed for genuine zero-to-one innovation in energy. He calls the prevalence of suits a red flag.
Need the right team. Question 5.
The distribution question. Do you have a way to not just create but deliver your product? Many clean tech firms completely neglected sales and distribution. They assumed governments or utilities would just buy their tech if it was green. Better Place, for instance, raised $800 million for battery swapping stations, but utterly failed to figure out how to sell the service to actual car owners.
Distribution failure. Question 6.
The durability question. Will your market position be defensible 10 and 20 years into the future? Clean tech companies were blindsided by predictable threats. They didn't anticipate the rise of fracking changing the natural gas market, nor the scale and speed of Chinese state-subsidized solar panel manufacturing, which crushed Western competitors on price. They lacked a long-term defensive moat.
No durability. And the final one. Question 7.
The secret question. Have you identified a unique opportunity that others don't see? Clean tech mostly failed here, too. Their justification was usually the conventional truth. The world needs clean energy. That's important, but it's not a secret. Everyone agrees on it. They lack the unique, non-consensus insight about technology or market adoption or distribution that could give them an edge.
So, failing on most, if not all, of these 7 questions doomed the sector, despite the worthy goal. Exactly. Which leads to a crucial, sobering takeaway. No sector will ever be so important that merely participating in it will be enough to build a great company. Having a noble mission, social entrepreneurship, solving climate change is not a substitute for building a sound business based on these fundamental principles.
But he does offer one clean tech counterexample that did succeed by getting all 7 questions right. Tesla. Yes, Tesla serves as the positive case study. They answered all 7 correctly. 1. Engineering. Truly superior integrated electric vehicle tech. 10x better driving experience initially. 2. Timing. Perfect timing to leverage government loans during the financial crisis and tap into growing environmental awareness. 3. Monopoly. Started by dominating a tiny niche, the high-end luxury electric sports car, the Roadster, ignoring the mass market initially. 4. People. Led by Elon Musk, a driven engineer with a bold vision, definitely not just a suit. 5. Distribution. Controlled their own sales and service network, bypassing traditional dealerships. 6. Durability. Built an incredibly strong brand and loyal following, creating a moat against incumbents. 7. Secret. Understood the non-obvious truth that early adopters bought Teslas not just to be green, but because they were cool, high-performance status symbols.
That secret about coolness, not just greenness, seems key.
It was critical. They tapped into consumer desire and status, which allowed them to charge premium prices, earn profits, and fund expansion into broader markets later. The lesson for anyone tackling big problems like energy or health is counterintuitive. Start small, find a defensible niche, dominate it, and leverage a unique insight. Don't just jump into the biggest part of the market head-on.
So we've covered the business principles, the strategy, the technology. The final chapter, chapter 14, the founder's paradox, circles back to the people who actually pull these 0-to-1 ventures off. The distinctive founder.
Yeah, Thiel argues that the kind of people who successfully lead these transformative companies are, well, often quite unusual. They're not interchangeable, bland managers. He points to his own PayPal team. They were a collection of brilliant but often eccentric individuals, including people who literally built bombs for fun in college. They were outliers.
And he suggests this isn't accidental. Founders' traits tend to follow an inverse normal distribution.
Exactly. Unlike most people, whose traits tend to cluster around the average, the peak of a bell curve, founders often exhibit traits at the extremes. They might be extremely charismatic or extremely awkward, incredibly wealthy on paper, or personally poor, deeply embedded insiders or total outsiders. They occupy the tails of the distribution.
Why would these extremes be beneficial for founding a 0-to-1 company?
Because creating something radically new requires breaking from the consensus, from the comfortable middle. Extreme traits might provide the necessary conviction, the unique perspective, or sometimes just the sheer force of personality needed to pursue a secret that everyone else dismisses. Media attention also tends to amplify these extremes, creating larger-than-life founder myths.
He gives examples like Richard Branson or Sean Parker.
Right. Branson, the seemingly natural entrepreneur who is also a master of cultivating an extreme, daredevil public image. Sean Parker, who started as a notorious outsider, Napster, but became the indispensable Silicon Valley insider who understood growth and network effects like few others. They embody this paradox of being both connected to the system and radically challenging it. This leads to the core insight about successful founders. Almost all successful entrepreneurs are simultaneously insiders and outsiders.
Insiders and outsiders. How does that work?
They need the insider knowledge to understand how the existing system works, where its weaknesses are, what technologies are feasible, who the key players are, but they also need the outsider perspective to see the flaws in that system, to question its assumptions, and to imagine a fundamentally different alternative to see the secret.
So you need to know the rules well enough to know which ones to break effectively.
Precisely. Thiel concludes that while founders can be difficult, perhaps even seem dangerous or unstable figures, they are necessary. Creating something genuinely new, moving from 0 to 1, seems to require these distinctive, often paradoxical personalities, not just competent, interchangeable managers who are optimized for running existing systems, 1 to N. Hashtag tag and outro.
Wow, what a journey through 0 to 1. It really does provide a powerful and often challenging blueprint for anyone thinking about building something truly new, something that aims to shape the future.
It definitely forces you to question a lot of conventional wisdom about business and innovation.
Let's try to quickly summarize the core arguments Peter Thiel and Blake Masters lay out in the book.
Okay. First and foremost, real progress comes from 0 to 1 innovation, creating new technology not just from 1 to N copying, which is globalization. Technology matters more for a sustainable future.
Second, monopoly, earned by solving a unique problem incredibly well, is the desired state for a successful business because perfect competition destroys profits and thus the ability to invest in the future.
Third, success isn't luck. It requires definite planning and strong conviction. You need a plan, a vision. Rejecting the false comfort of indefinite optimism, diversification, and just iterating is key.
Fourth, the foundations of a startup are critical and almost impossible to fix later. This means choosing the right co-founders, aligning ownership, possession, and control, and building a committed, mission-driven team united by a secret.
Fifth, don't fall for the field of dreams fallacy. Distribution is just as important as product. You must find and master the one distribution channel that works for your business. Products don't sell themselves.
And finally, the future isn't about machines replacing humans. It's about man-machine complementarity, using technology to augment human judgment and tackle harder problems together.
Those are the big pillars, I think.
Absolutely. So as you, our listeners, think about how these ideas apply to your own work or ventures, here may be the key takeaways to really hold on to.
Okay, bullet points. Always aim for a monopoly. Seek durable competitive advantage, because intense competition is for losers, financially speaking.
Dare to be bold. Think big. Thiel argues aiming for something trivial is actually riskier in the long run than aiming high, even if you might fail.
Constantly look for secrets, important truths about technology, or people that others haven't grasped yet. That's where unique value comes from.
Define your market narrowly at first. Start small, dominate that niche completely, and then scale up deliberately. Don't attack the biggest market from day one.
Think definitely, not indefinitely. Have a concrete plan, especially focused on generating strong future cash flows. Avoid just reacting or keeping options open forever.
And if you join a company, especially a startup, try to join a mafia, a team that's intensely aligned around a unique mission and feels more like a conspiracy than just a job.
And maybe one final thought, echoing Chapter 6. Remember, you have agency. Don't think of yourself as just subject to fate or luck. As Thiel says, you are not a lottery ticket. You can choose to focus, to plan, to pursue a unique secret, and deliberately try to build the future you want to see.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Us Bookcast. We hope you found inspiration in these ideas. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Together, we're co-creating the world of tomorrow.